Entering the fantasy football season, here's a few running backs that I think could be busts. And guys, I honestly wouldn't look to draft this season unless you get them on a bargain part of your league. The first guy, Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. No doubt about it, Saquon Barkley's a top talent in the league here when he's healthy. But it's a big gift with him. The last few seasons, he's missed games, missed pretty much whole seasons. And also the production last season wasn't good. 162 carries, 593 rush yards, 2 touchdowns, 41 catches, 263 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns with a fumble loss. No doubt about it, I could see Barkley break out and have a good year this year, but he's been a bust for so many seasons now the last 2 or 3 years here. I just can't count on him with the injuries. And yeah, reports are coming out he's going to get a monster workload, but let's be honest here, this Giant team, they don't have many great weapons on this offense, and just in targets out of the backfield and carrying the football alone, he's going to get a lot of volume, is Saquon Barkley. But he's a guy right now going in the second round, and I just can't count on him. I'd rather go a different route, get a decent running back in the first round, and Najee Harris, maybe a Kamara if you want him, or a Joe Mixon, and then second round, go with one of these wide receivers over a Saquon Barkley. So right now, with his ADP in the second round, and a guy you just can't count on over the last few seasons with injuries, and even last year with a lack of putting up fantasy numbers, he's right now a guy I consider a bust, and I'll let someone else deal with him this season. The next guy is Breece Hall of the New York Jets. Breece Hall, yeah, he was the best running back in college football last season, arguably, but right now, he's going way too early for my taste in fantasy drafts. Anywhere from the late second to early third round is Breece Hall, when he's on a New York Jet team that they haven't had many good running backs for decades, it seems like, since Curtis Martin being their top guy over there. But right now, this Jet team, they're banged up on the offensive line. Beacon, he's going to be out possibly for the whole season. And the quarterback, Zach Wilson, banged up already, out 2 to 4 weeks here. And the Jet offense, they never really have guys who are going to be big fantasy assets. I know Michael Carter was decent last year in fantasy football, but he was pretty much a guy that came out of nowhere, and I think he's a better receiver out of the backfield than Breece Hall. But right now, Hall's going to be the guy over there in New York. I think the expectations are way too high in terms of fantasy football for him, especially going early in these rounds. If he was on a team with a great offense and a great quarterback, and they just plug him in like a Najee Harris last season, even though I know the Steelers' offense wasn't good, but he still was in a legit offense with playmakers. With the Jets, a lot of unknowns on this roster, even though we know they had a great draft on paper, but we have to see how it pans out on the field. But right now, with his ADP and the team he's on with their track record with running backs, he's just a guy I would pass on and let someone else go get him, honestly. In that position, I could get a David Montgomery in that area, even a J.K. Dobbins, or even go the receiver route with an A.J. Brown in that position, or even a Tyreek Hill, even though I'm not a biggest Tyreek Hill guy, but I'd rather have him over a Breece Hall. So right here, I think Hall's going way too high in fantasy drafts, and I don't think he's going to live up to the hype this season, and he's definitely a running back I think could be a bust this season. The next guy's Eli Mitchell of the San Francisco 49ers. So right now, he's going third, fourth round in most fantasy leagues here. And he's hurt already with a hamstring injury, is Eli Mitchell. He's out for the remainder of the preseason. He's a great talent, no doubt about it, is Mitchell, putting up pretty good numbers last year in only 207 carries, 963 rush yards, 5 touchdowns, 19 catches, 137 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. But right now, his ADP is way too high, in my opinion, and he's very injury prone. And I know San Francisco, they got a lot of decent backs over there. Jeffrey Wilson Jr., I know he's injury prone as well, but when he sees the field, he puts up numbers. Hasty, he was decent in a cup of coffee of a few starts over the last few seasons. And a guy people forget about is Trey Sermon, who they drafted pretty high, even though he was a big bust last season. A lot of people were taking him 5th, 6th round in fantasy leagues, and he barely saw the field. So Eli Mitchell, with his injury concerns and his ADP problems here, he's definitely a guy I think could be a bust. But when he does play, he definitely put up numbers last season. And now with Trey Lance as the quarterback, though, he might lose some goal line carries as well if he's 100% healthy. So right now, already with a hamstring injury that can nag for weeks on end, even though they already declared him out for the preseason, he's definitely a guy with a void and definitely a running back I could see a bust this season. Next guy is Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Another guy, a lot of hype last season coming in to the year. And then he went out with a season-ending injury with the Achilles was that knee. But now he's back, and a lot of people are taking him high in fantasy leagues. Third, fourth round, and he hasn't played a snap in the NFL. Even I know he was college teammates with Trevor Lawrence's Travis Etienne, but I just can't believe he's going to be a guy that's going to get all the snaps and be the number one guy over there in Jacksonville after James Robinson's put up some pretty decent years over the first few seasons of his NFL career. I know Etienne, he could catch the ball. I know he's got the rapport with Trevor Lawrence. But let's be real here. To go third or fourth round is way too high, in my opinion, here for Travis Etienne. Yeah, he's a good receiver out of the backfield. Yeah, he could be a third down back down the line. But right now, I still think James Robinson is the guy over there in Jacksonville, even though we know he's banged up coming off an off-season surgery here. But right now, Etienne's going way too high in fantasy leagues. And a lot of hype about him last season and this season. And to think about it, he's coming off a huge injury. We don't know if he's going to be the same like he was, obviously, in college. Some of these injuries take 2-3 years to heal before you get back to form. So right now, I'll let someone else worry about him. And with all the hype with him, I think he's going to be a bust. And the fifth and final running back that I think is going to be a bust this season is Devin Singletary of the Buffalo Bills. So right now, reports are coming out of Buffalo. It could be a three-headed back share over there in the backfield with James Cook, the rookie, Zach Moss, and Devin Singletary. And to be honest, I think James Cook is going to be the guy over there in Buffalo that fantasy owners are going to want, and the guy that's going to be breaking out by fifth or sixth week of the season. So last year for Singletary, he had a bounce-back year, though. 188 carries, 870 rush yards, 7 touchdowns, 40 catches, 228 receiving yards, and a touchdown. So right there in Buffalo, to be honest, they don't need a lot out of their running backs. Josh Allen, in his own way, is like a running back, running the football a lot, taking some goal line touches from running backs. And they're a pass-happy offense with tons of weapons as well, with Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Jamison Crowder, a good possession receiver they signed, and Dawson Knox. So right here, Buffalo, they're not going to rely on the run a lot. Josh Allen runs enough as it is as well. So right now, none of these running backs might have a good year at all. But Singletary going right now, 5th to 6th round, he's a guy I just don't want at that ADP. And if he falls to the 8th and 9th round, it's a different story. But right now, with his ADP and the way this Bill offense is formatted and with the other running backs in the mix, he's a guy I would avoid, and a guy I think that's going to be a bust is Singletary. So that's a few running backs that I think will be busts here entering the fantasy football season and drafts in the next couple weeks.